welcome to meeting number 27 of the Standing Committee on Veterans Affairs of the House of Commons. Before we begin, on behalf of the committee, I would like to take a moment. Earlier this week, we learned that there were some remains in Lusengul that were discovered
on August 15, 1917, while digging a trench on the first day of the Battle of Hill 70. And despite the efforts of his comrades amid mustard gas attacks, he was never recovered. Découvert en août 2020 lors des travaux d'excavation.
He was discovered in August, and his remains were identified in 2025.
Passing identifying Private Detmold highlights the importance to reunite fallen soldiers with their family, their military units, and their country. I just thought it was important today that we start, and let's remember the sacrifice of Canadians who are still have not been identified and family who are still grieving. So I just wanted to share this, and lest we forget. Thank you very much. Donc, conformément à l'article
pursuant to Standing Order 108.2 and the motion adopted on November 25, 2025, the committee is resuming its study on the monitoring of the rehabilitation services awarded to PCVRS.
Meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the standing orders, and before we continue, I would ask that all in-person participants to consult the guidelines written on the cards on the table. These measures are in place to help prevent audio and feedback incidents and to protect the health and safety of all participants, including the interpreters. You will also notice a QR code on the card which links to a short awareness video. Pour garantir le bon déroulement de la réunion, j'aimerais...
In order to ensure that this meeting goes smoothly, I would like to share some information for the witnesses and members. Before speaking, please wait for me to give you the floor. Regarding interpretation, for those who are in the room, you can use the earpiece and choose your desired channel. I would like to remind everyone that comments from members and witnesses need to be made through the chair.
Members in the room, if you wish to speak, please raise your hand. The clerk and I will manage the speaking orders as best as we can, and we appreciate your patience and understanding in this regard.
I would now like to welcome our witnesses for the first hour of today's meeting. From the Ombuds Office, Nishka Jardin and Dwayne Shippers, Assistant Ombud. We're going to start with the opening remarks, and then we will move on to the Q&A with committee members. Colonel Jordan, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Bonjour, Madame la Présidente.
Hello, Chair and committee members. Thank you for inviting me to share our observations regarding the rehabilitation services contract awarded to Partners in Canadian Veterans Rehabilitation Services.
Of the contract in November 2022, we have received 100 complaints, which is less than 2% of the overall complaints we received during that same time period. Most of these we refer directly back to the department, as VAC must be given the opportunity to correct an issue first. Where we did investigate, we found unfairness in 6 cases. 5 were resolved based on our intervention, and 1 was resolved by the department before we could approach them. Importantly, these 6 validated complaints did not point to any underlying systemic issues. Rather, they were specific to individual circumstances. I have been keeping a close eye on the complaints we receive about PCVRS for any pattern that would indicate a systemic unfairness in the way rehabilitation services are being provided by the contractor. That said, I can tell you that I have heard numerous informal complaints about PCVRS, both from veterans and from mental health treatment providers. Veterans primarily complain about communication issues or delays that lead to confusion about next steps, timelines, program requirements, or the poor communication skills of some PCVRS staff. They have also spoken to me about the volume of assessments they are asked to undertake, that it can take hours to fill out the survey questionnaires, or that it is re-triggering. and they are being asked to retell the story of their trauma to multiple different assessors, even though that information is readily available in their file. For example, some survivors of the LGBT purge have complained to us about the manner in which they were approached and how that triggered the especially traumatic feelings of being interrogated by the Canadian Forces. However, for us to undertake a systemic review, we rely primarily on evidence we gather from formal complaints that points to a potential barrier to equitable access to the programs and benefits provided in legislation for our veterans and their families. I have and continue to encourage veterans to submit formal complaints to our office when they feel they are being treated unfairly. I would add that we know the Department's Audit and Evaluation Division recently completed an evaluation of the rehabilitation program, which benefited from access to veteran files, something that our office has been blocked from for the past few years. That said, I look forward to seeing how the department addresses the audit and evaluation recommendations, some of which are focused on ensuring the program targets veterans who are suitable candidates for rehabilitation and to consider alternate supports for those veterans who are not. Over the past 3 years, I have grown concerned about what I have been seeing and hearing with respect to the rehabilitation program writ large. We have many questions around the construct of the program and the manner in which it is delivered. For example, are veterans who have no realistic prospects for returning to the workforce enrolled in the rehabilitation program primarily to secure the income replacement benefit? Are rehabilitation outcomes improving? Are veterans getting better? Are more veterans returning to work? Is the PCVRS contract saving taxpayer dollars over and above what VAC was paying for the delivery of rehabilitation services prior to the implementation of the contract? And are veterans getting better service? We will continue to monitor the complaints we receive related to PCVRS and the rehabilitation program and address them on an individual basis. We will certainly launch a systemic review if we identify evidence of trends that could be indicative of a systemic problem with the administration of the rehabilitation program. To date, that has not been the case. Ultimately, our common goal must be to ensure that programs are designed and administered to best serve our veterans to successfully transition from military to civilian life. Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Colonel. I will now start our first round of questions for 6 minutes, and we will go to Mr. Richards.
Okay, thank you. There we go. Didn't want to mess with the microphone while it was on. That we're often told not to do that, so we fixed that problem. Okay, appreciate your opening remarks, your comments. You mentioned off the top that you've had about 100 complaints, which is about 2% of the total complaints you've had in your office over that period of time. I think what I was hearing from you is that you don't see that as enough to necessarily indicate. You're not saying there isn't systemic issues, but you're saying it's not enough to indicate systemic issues. Was that a fair characterization?
No,
Okay, you don't think there is?
Madame la Présidente, it is not. I would ask you not to interpret it that way. What I am saying is that among those 100 complaints, the 6 that where we found unfairness did not indicate a systemic problem that we could say there's a common thread running through these. That it does. I don't need more than one complaint to indicate that there may be a systemic issue, and some of our reviews have been based on just one complaint or one observation.
That's fair, and I think I've got sort of 2 streams of follow up on that. I'll do the one. Start on the one side, and then I'll come back to the other. The first being that we heard a number of times on Monday. I'm sure you watched from VAC officials and from PCVRS and associated officials, kind of quoting this survey that they used of participants in the program and saying that I think 74% were saying that they had an improved quality of life of those who kind of had finished the program. It turns out that that the numbers behind that survey that's about 732 participants out of over 23,000 participants that so less than 3% of the veterans involved in the program. Would you say that's enough to indicate that the program has been a success, or is that not enough of a sample size? What would your thoughts be on that?
Thank you for the question. I'm not the one to ask about that survey because we were not part of that, and we didn't participate in that and didn't see that. But in terms of satisfaction, that's what you're asking. Are veterans satisfied with the program? As I said in my statement, I have met many veterans across the country, and the ones who are happy with the program don't come up to me. They don't come and say, "Hey, I'm delighted with they just don't. What I hear, and obviously as the Ombudsman, we're here to hear the complaints. And I have heard many informal, they say to me, I'm unhappy for whatever the reasons that I raised there. So I'm unable to speak to the survey. I can only tell you what I've heard informally.
And that's fine. Let me go down the other stream of thought that I had, which is, you mentioned the things you hear informally, and granted, I would agree, it's probably no different for us. We hear from the veterans who are not happy with the situation, right? That's not unfair. But what we do hear from those veterans, certainly to me, seem to be systemic types of issues, right? Like we hear of veterans, like you mentioned, the reassessments that are constantly being done. I would call that a systemic issue, I would say. We also hear about the fact that there's already this big bureaucracy at VAC they have to deal with, and now there's this second bureaucracy that overlaps that, and they can't figure out. In fact, I think even the two bureaucracies themselves sometimes have trouble figuring out who's responsible for what. So how is a veteran supposed to know? Seems like a systemic issue as well. And then the third one that we quite often hear is more from service providers. It's also from veterans about the fact that they can't work with the service provider they choose because they're not enrolled in the program. And we heard over and over that they can just go ahead and enroll, but that's certainly not the experience that we're hearing from the service providers. I wondered if you had any thoughts around that. Would you consider those kind of systemic issues as well? Would you have any recommendations on what could be done to improve that?
So when we are looking for a systemic problem, it's in terms of fairness. So there is a program in place. Veterans have access to this program, and there isn't anything that we've perceived in the complaints we've received that we've looked at that we see an unfairness in that access. We hear about the assessments. Assessment to me, for a service provider to understand what they can deliver to that veteran, how they should design a program of services to help that veteran, there needs to be an assessment. The amount of that assessment and all of that is something. It's how do I say, well, the amount of assessment that you're doing is incorrect. And I've only had there's only been 3 formal complaints to us about the assessment itself that we could say were unfair.
Okay. So related to this, we've seen an announcement of a bunch of cuts at the Bureau of Pension Advocates. And I think the concern we have here is that 89% of the time veterans get a better result than what they got to begin with, and this kind of ties to these assessments. I'm just curious what your thoughts are around those cuts at BPA and the wait times that'll mean for veterans. Are you concerned about that, and what can be done about those?
I'm very sorry. That will be for second round. So on this, I will allow Mrs. Hertel for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, Colonel Jardine and Mr. Shippers. Nice to see you back with us again. Colonel Jardine, can I clarify how long you've served as Canada's Veterans Ombudsman?
Yes, I completed an initial 5-year mandate and was reappointed for another 3 years in November of 2025.
Wonderful. And can I confirm that there has been an office of the Veterans Ombudsman in Canada since 2007, I believe?
Yes.
So nearly 2 decades.
Yes.
So this office isn't new, and you're not new to the role?
I believe I'm getting close to saying I understand what I'm doing. Yes.
I wasn't going to ask it that way, but thank you. So then would it be fair to say that you are there, your team is there to hear from veterans and raise their concerns to the minister when something, in your opinion, is wrong or going well, I suppose?
So our focus is on fairness. I will confess to you that it can be frustrating because I see and hear the frustration out there, but our focus is on fairness. And so we have to be, in order for me to be credible, to sit here and explain and to share what it is that I'm doing on behalf of the veteran community, I have to be credible. And so I stay within the guidelines and the mandate that has been provided to me. And that is that if I make a recommendation to the minister, that it be based on evidence and that it is there to resolve an unfairness that may create a barrier to access for veterans to access the benefits and services that have been put in place.
Excellent. I keep going for the microphone too. So, okay, so next, may I confirm that you have been following the implementation of the Veterans Affairs Canada Rehabilitation Services and Vocational Assistant Program, or RSVP, since its inception?
Yes.
And can I confirm that the program was intended to address concerns such as regional and access disparities, language-based options, and a host of other veteran outcome-centered concerns that might have been present for veterans in past iterations of rehabilitation services offered by VAC? That was a really long sentence. Would you like me to repeat it, or are you good?
No, that's fine. I can't say what the purpose of, I understand the purpose of the rehabilitation program as written in legislation. And that is the extent of my, what I would say I understand.
Okay. And then can I confirm that in your role as a Veterans Ombud, you would look at the program with a critical lens that asks what is the stated intention and what are the outcomes?
I regret that is not the case. I'm not here to second guess what Parliament has put in place as programs and benefits for Canada's veterans and their families. I'm here when a veteran, in certain circumstances, so not the disability claim, for example, but when they are seeking or receiving benefits from Veterans Affairs and they receive a decision or their interaction with the department feels not right to them, they get a decision that they feel is unfair, then they feel they've been treated unfairly, they can come to our office, and that is what we will look at.
Okay, that makes sense. So, in your experience, is it accurate or fair to say that all veterans are united in their priorities and in their perspectives?
I would say that's a sweeping statement, Madame. I think all veterans want to move on with their lives and as they return to civilian life. They want to move on. They want to receive the benefits if they've been injured or made ill during their service. They know the department is there to provide those to them, and they want to, for those who are seeking those benefits, they want to be able to take advantage of them.
Okay. So would it be better or more accurate to say veterans as a term encompasses a broad range of individuals at a variety of stages in their life with a range of priorities and challenges that they're addressing in their transition to civilian life?
Yes.
That would be more accurate? Okay. So why is it better to take the view of nuance and variety rather than painting every veteran with the same broad brush and then lumping them all together without distinction?
I'm sorry, I don't quite understand what
Why
you're
is
asking.
it better to indicate there are nuances and differences among veterans instead of painting them all with one brush?
I truly beg your pardon. I think, I don't think that that's the case. I don't know what you're referring to, in what context. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. Just looking for clarity on whether it's better to consider them all as individuals and not lump them all into one.
I think that every veteran that comes forward with their circumstances, and certainly we listen to each veteran when they come, and we listen to their circumstances. And you're absolutely right. Every veteran has their own circumstances. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you, and I apologize to all of you always if I have to interrupt you. I really want to make sure we keep on the time. Madame Gaudreau will be addressing you in français, in French, so I will invite you to possibly put the translation, make sure that you can hear Madame Gaudreau well before we start her time. Okay? Madame Gaudreau pour 6 minutes.
Ms. Gaudreau, you have 6 minutes. Thank you, Chair. Thank you for being with us today. When we reach out to an ombudsperson, usually that's a last resort, and it's an opportunity for veterans to flag when something isn't working well. Because this is the last resource, on your website, it mentions delays and a high volume of complaints. And I've been thinking, if I put myself in the shoes of a veteran, what's the message that's being shared to them in saying, I know that this is your final option, but it might take time before we respond?
Merci, Madame.
Thank you for the question.
What do veterans feel when they look even at our website, the Office of Last Resort? We aim to get back to veterans as quickly as possible. We also have a service standard. We had that message up on our website. I'm not certain that it is still there today because we did clear our backlog. Was only as a way to manage their expectations. And we're very careful about when we put up such a message as when the backlog gets to the point where it may take us longer to get back to them. We endeavor to meet that need as best we can.
Oh, excellent.
Great, thank you. Are you missing any resources, financial resources, human resources? Because the goal, I'm sure, is to offer services as quickly as possible. Do you have everything at your disposal in order to carry out your mandate?
Merci pour cette question.
Thank you for the question.
We have managed to deliver our service within the budget that we have been given and the resources that we have been given. Could we use more? Absolutely. Please.
Sorry, I would just add one thing, and that is, unlike a number of other statutory ombuds, federally even, what we don't have is the ability to compel production of documents, access to files, to do systemic reviews. We don't have that automatic authority. That would be an incredibly helpful tool to have. We rely on the cooperation of the department to obtain information, but that often comes to us in the form of delays due to redactions that they will apply. We won't get access to a complete file, for example, for a systemic review.
Oh, OK. D'entrée de jeu, je voulais...
I just wanted to start by saying that at 2 p.m. today, on your website, the delays were still mentioned. And now, so if I understood correctly regarding resources or things that could help you compared to other ombuds, you are missing certain things in order to be able to act. We're not necessarily missing human resources, but that statutory element. And so if you're dealing with a subcontractor, here we're dealing with a subcontractor, not with the government apparatus. So how can you intervene if this is not a government agency? It's quite concerning.
How is it that a contracted service can do the job. In terms of that contract and the cost of that contract, that is beyond what we can look at.
OK, donc il n'y a pas d'intervention à les valider.
So you don't have to validate, you just do reports. That all right. Do you believe that the system as it is respects people's dignity and the rights of veterans, because you did mention hundreds of complaints, or are there gaps between what has been promised? They have been promised a lot of things, and it's different from what they are experiencing, and you are the voice of our veterans.
Does VAC do its job of delivering services in accordance with the Veterans Bill of Rights? I believe that these are good people. These are good people trying to do their very best for veterans and their families. Do they get it wrong sometimes? Yes. That's why we're here. I advocate and have been advocating for the department to communicate with veterans in a better way, a more plain language way, straightforward, direct. I would say that's their biggest downfall, is that while they do such good work, the communication with veterans sometimes gets in the way of that perception. And I have advocated for that since I began.
Donc, comme il reste quelques secondes, moi, ce que j'en...
I don't have a lot of time left, so clearly something's missing, because everyone has good intentions, but in reality there are gaps and it can lead to significant problems. Thank you, Chair.
Beaucoup, Madame Gaudreau.
Thank you, Ms. Goudreau. We're going to move on to our second round of questions. We're going to start with Ms. Wagenthal.
So, Colonel Jardine, I want to say I really appreciate what you do. Very often in my office we hear things. I'm able to send them to you, and you have often given me more clarity and an ability to communicate with a veteran who maybe is apprehensive about doing it directly. So I appreciate what you do. In regard to PCVRS, I am hearing a lot of complaints. So one of the biggest is that they are required to do this assessment, or they can't get in the program. They are very worried about their IRB. And one case in specific, and we heard last meeting, that they don't get to see their assessment. They get some feedback verbally, but they don't actually see it. One thought to see it, however, signed off knowing that it had already been sent out, as they say, to all the whoever they are deeming should be the providers. Is that something that you feel a veteran should come and talk to you about?
Absolutely.
Okay. Because you do talk about informal complaints, and you get them, but you can't act on that.
It is far more helpful if a veteran comes to us directly. We've heard from many service providers, for example, with their frustration. They relay the frustration of the veteran, and I ask them, please ask the veteran to come to our office so that I can hear it directly.
So a question on that: if they're talking to you informally within your responsibilities, can you suggest to them that they consider submitting a formal complaint to you?
I do.
You can, okay.
Every time.
Okay, so that's something that we could certainly do more to support in you getting the help for them that they do need. So you mentioned, and I want to bring this up again, I think we did talk about it here a bit just previously, about an audit. Was that PCVRS that who did an audit?
Veterans Affairs itself, their own audit and evaluation division, did an evaluation of the rehabilitation program.
Okay.
And they have six or seven recommendations that we are very keen to see how the department responds to those.
Okay, so this isn't a case when you say you can't get access to the files. I was assuming you meant like a veteran's files. But if a veteran wants you to see his or her files, that's okay, but you're not getting access. So the department is auditing itself, but you don't have an opportunity.
So when we do if I may, when we do a systemic review, for some of them, it would be we can't proceed unless we get a statistically relevant number of veteran files that meet the criteria we're looking for so that we can do the review based on what the systemic thing that we are looking for. The department's audit and evaluation had access to veterans' files. We have been cut off from access to veterans' files for the past 4 years or so, 3 or 4 years.
And how does that happen?
We were told that it's a privacy issue that had not been the case for the previous 10-something years, whatever, and it's something we've been working hard to try and overcome, but we've not been successful.
So this has been brought up often as a recommendation that every veteran should have the option to sign off on the availability of their files, and then that is neither here nor there. That is something that whatever department or whatever it is should have access to. So that is something that perhaps needs to be recommended once again. One more question, if I have time. Oh, I do. Perfect. We've talked previously about the spouses and families' right to have access to support specifically in mental health needs in their own right. Does that fall under PCVRS or does that fall under the other program?
It would not fall. The rehabilitation program, which is delivered by PCVRS,
Right.
is solely for the veteran.
Okay,
And in some cases, survivors.
right. Okay, so survivors as in surviving veterans or survivors of
A widow or widower,
Okay,
and some spouses.
okay, that's interesting because I have found out about that as well, and the number of survivors that exist is significant. The number that have gotten assistance through PCVRS is very minimal. So, just an interesting point. Okay, and I guess my time is up, but thank you very much. That's helpful.
Thank you very much. Now we will have Mr. Casey for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Welcome, Colonel Jardine. Back in 2023, this committee did a study on the PCVRS contract, which was at that time brand new, and offered up 10 recommendations to government. And recommendation number 10 was directed at your office. And I completely understand that your office is not obligated to take direction from the committee. That's not what it's how it's structured. And I expect that you're aware of it. But if I may, that recommendation from that report was that the Office of the Veterans Ombudsman be asked to publish a report in 1 year's time on the effects the contracts had on veterans, VAC employees, and service providers. So. And there was a government response to that recommendation. So my first question for you is whether any such report was published.
No.
And why not?
First of all, we can't do anything with respect to VAC employees or service providers. And with respect to the contract, there is nothing inherently unfair. There's nothing systemically unfair about the department choosing to deliver a service or a benefit under legislation by using a contractor. In all of the complaints that we've received, we did not find a common thread of unfairness, of a barrier to access to the program. The assessments, for example, are, I would say, an irritant, and I know that that's not the right word. I'm not meaning to minimalize it. I know it's deeply frustrating to veterans, and it can be re-triggering. But it in and of itself isn't a barrier to the program. And so I did not find in all this time a common thread that would say there's an unfairness here, a systemic problem that we need to investigate.
Thank you. Of the 100 complaints that you received, 6 of which you looked into, I know I'm not phrasing that correctly. I'll get you to correct me. How many of those 6 came from members of Parliament around the table?
I'm sorry, Madame la Présidente, I do not know how many would have come through your offices.
And that would also go for the 94 that didn't merit being further examined, is that right?
It's not that they didn't merit being further examined, it's that more than half of them, we reconnected them back to the department because they hadn't already complained to the department, and the department usually is able to resolve those. They were, and I mean, the rest of them didn't proceed or whatever. But we're only concerned about the like when the veteran comes to us, we don't ask them, did it come through your member of parliament? That part I'm unaware of, if they had been to one of your offices first.
So it could have been none, it could have been all.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay, thank you. And you've done some advertising to try and get feedback from veterans, I understand. I think you mentioned earlier that you had something on your website.
We've put out social media posts.
Yeah.
So when I'm out talking to veterans during my town halls, I have always encouraged them. And whenever I hear from a service provider or someone saying, hey, there's a problem here, I ask them to submit a complaint to us.
I had a look at your social media. On your Instagram post, you received exactly no public comments. And on your Facebook post, you had 38 likes, 33 comments, 31 shares. 3 of the comments were positive. 3 were negative, and there were a few that were on different topics, including, criticizing your own office. Have you followed up on any of those, including the positive comments?
We don't. Oh, please
So
go ahead.
we will follow up. If someone has a specific complaint, we will follow up offline with them and ask them to submit a complaint to our office. We don't go online in front of everyone else and do it that way.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Maintenant, pour 2 minutes et demie.
For 2.5 minutes. Don't forget your earpiece.
French. Madame Gaudreau pour 2 minutes et demie.
Ms. Gaudreau for 2.5 minutes. I'm concerned with the impact of cuts and budget cuts. Legal services for pensions, for example. They had mentioned that there were going to be cuts, and there are already delays expected for April. Will you be ready? Are you ready for any pressure that you might face?
Pension Advocates is closely related to the Veterans Review and Appeal Board, so there's a bright line between the work that they do and the work that we do. No one needs to go to the Bureau of Pension Advocates to complain to our office. So there is no impact from anything to do with the Bureau or the Veterans Review Appeal Board and our office. There's zero overlap between our 2 mandates.
Mais en fait, j'ai peut-être...
Perhaps I misunderstood in your opening remarks. What are the main complaints that you get? Is it because of delays? Is it regarding the quality of service?
So the majority, the top complaint we received today is about the denial of treatment benefits. Second to that is slipped down to second place is the wait times for the disability claim, which again, I can't help with, but we can look into. And often we're able to help the veteran to understand why perhaps their claim is on hold. Maybe they weren't aware of that. So the number 1 complaint we receive is about the denial of treatment benefits. So when they've received their disability claim is approved, let's say it's for their right knee, they get an approval on the claim, their doctor prescribes something for them as treatment, and the department denies them access to that treatment, or they don't reimburse that treatment. That is the that's the number 1 complaint we receive.
OK. Bien, j'aimerais ça, en fait, qu'on...
I would like for us to receive that report so that we can include it in our report and better understand. We don't want to say that it's a systemic problem. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Merci beaucoup, Madame Gaudreau. For 5 minutes, Mr. Viersen.
Chair, and thank you to the Ombudsman for being here today. One of the things you mentioned earlier on in your comments was about you felt frustrated sometimes in that you're kind of shackled on what you can do and not do. Where, I guess if fairness is the thing, where is your opportunity to advocate for veterans just broadly? Like, I guess do you have that? Like, that's some other ombudsman, that's their role. That's one of their last pieces of it. And advocate on behalf, speak on behalf of veterans broadly. Do you have that as part of your mandate? I couldn't find it online.
I do not. My mandate is very clear. It is strictly to do with a veteran's interaction with Veterans Affairs Canada. Please don't tell me that I'm now allowed to advocate for veterans. Because
I've been telling her that she's not allowed to do that for years. But I think you'll find that most ombuds offices, notwithstanding it might say they can advocate for whatever constituency, it's advocating for fairness for that constituency. And there's some standard ombuds training. It's offered by Osgoode Hall in Toronto and that kind of thing. And virtually every ombuds office in the country participates through that process.
Okay, so so you cannot make judgments on decisions that governments have made. Essentially, is like
if they're unfair, we'll talk. So, for example, the retroactivity provisions in the budget bill. We brought those forward because they were unfair. Unfortunately, no amendments were offered to the budget bill to get rid of them. My understanding, it's now in the Senate. But we found those to be unfair, as it would have affected a group of Canada's most seriously ill and injured veterans who are in long-term care.
Okay. So I am seeing with the PCVRS, like one of my frustrations with it is just around this exclusivity clause as part of the contract, and now I'm seeing that is part of the fix the fairness piece, because if some people could stay with their old provider and some went with the PCVRS, there is an opportunity for unfairness there. So that I was just wondering why that exclusivity clause was in there. Like why did we push everybody into the LifeMark system at the moment? Did you investigate that at all?
if I may, if you have a disability claim, let's say for mental health, and it's approved, you now have treatment benefits for your mental health for the rest of your life. You can choose the provider you want. That is one set of benefits. The rehabilitation program is a completely separate set of benefits, and there's no overlap between those two. The rehabilitation program exists to help a veteran return to being employed, I guess, in civilian life, able to move forward in their civilian life, earn an income, return to that way of living. And if they feel that they have a barrier to that, this program is there for them. And the details of the contract, you would have to ask the department on. Where the issue lies primarily, in my opinion, is that it is connected to the income replacement benefit. And there's a problem, there's a connection there that veterans, there can be problems there. With respect to the providers, the contract, the PCVRS, how the contract is designed, if providers choose not to be part of that, that's their choice. But the veteran still has access to that, to their own provider if they have a mental health claim, and they are they are entitled to that treatment for the rest of their life. That's a separate matter. This rehab program, it's meant to be short term. It's a 2-year at the most, and then they move on to a different assessment to see whether, do you leave the program, or are you deemed to have a diminished earning capacity, and then you receive the income replacement benefit for life. The construct of that program, the way those two pieces are connected, the income replacement and the rehabilitation, participation in the rehabilitation program, is often the thing that I hear from veterans. And the audit and evaluation, their evaluation focused on that.
Thank you very much. I'm very sorry, Mr. Viersen. I was looking at our witness just to make sure she slowly finished her thoughts. Again, Colonel, sorry about that. Thank you very much. Now I will have 5 minutes, Mr. Oliphant.
Thank
and
you,
welcome.
thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the staff from the Ombudsman. I'm having deja vu all over again, and how independent do you feel your office is from the Minister?
I feel I am completely independent.
And do you report to the Minister or to the Parliament?
I report to the Minister.
I would just take a moment then to remind the committee of Bill C-607, which was a bill I presented in 2010, which would have advocated for you to be reporting to Parliament. I may someday, in my old age, bring it back, because I say that out of huge respect for your office. I don't think there's any more important office in the Government of Canada than your office. The work you do, I think, is tremendously important, and it has to do with the sacred covenant that we have with enlisted people who have joined the Canadian Armed Forces and have served the country. And they have absolutely the rights that are declared in the Veterans Bill of Rights. In that statement of rights, which you are part of your mandate comes from the bill, it doesn't just talk about fairness. It also talks about dignity and respect. And I just want to get that on the record as well, because it's more than just fairness and procedural fairness. It's ensuring that the department treats our veterans with respect and dignity. I'm sounding like an opposition member right now. Love it. Having been the critic for Veterans Affairs, it's in my blood. Also, being the Member of Parliament for Sunnybrook and the Veterans Facility, which is Canada's, I believe, foremost centre for Sunnybrook for veterans care in the country, will do that. All of that to say is that a program may not be perfect. It may be able to be improved. Do you have the ability to make recommendations based on your general experience of the complaints either pursued or resolved to say in a letter to the Minister about potential improvements that could be made to any program offered by the government?
So we did do a report in January 2021 on the mental health supports for families. And I was not the ombud at the time that the work was done, the investigation was done to come up with that recommendation, which does require legislative change. Since then, we've not made any recommendations that require legislative change. Everything has been focused on VAC policies. If we did find something where we felt that it was that it required our attention, that there was an unfairness here that was deeply deeply problematic to the veteran community, then I think with care we would undertake that kind of investigation. It would take time and resources, and the level of investigation would have to be exacting in order for me to find that there's an unfairness I can point to say to the Minister, this is an unfairness and this is the effect it's having, and here's our recommendation.
That you feel you have that liberty to do that?
I do.
And with respect to this particular contracted service, at this point, obviously, the committee has concerns. Some veterans have concerns. They have been raised. Are they at the level of a systemic problem or work that could be done to improve the program?
I wish I had more complaints that came into my office, that I can say, here's an unfairness, and it's an unfairness that is clearly systemic. It's not just based on the individual circumstances of the person who's complained to us. That would feel a lot better, quite frankly. However, the fact that it's a contract And we just have not found that common thread. We just haven't seen it yet.
That's good news. It's sort of frustrating that you're dealing with piecemeal, one-on-one issues of problems. However, the meta-narrative, the large story is this is fixable. There are tweaks that could be done to make this program work.
So the thing that I am most deeply concerned about is the construct of the rehabilitation program in the regulations, or is it under the VHCRs? Yes. So
No, it's in the legislation.
okay, so legislation. And the department's own audit and evaluation did the work to look into this, and they've come up with recommendations that I think put the finger on the systemic problem in the construct of the problem itself, of the program itself, regardless of how it is delivered.
There is. Oh, I could go all day.
I know, Colonel Jardine, thank you very much. Member, it is, I would say we'll complete this first round. We have also another guest coming after. So on behalf of the committee, Colonel Jardine, I want to say thank you for joining us. Encore une fois, merci pour vos services au Canada.
Thank you again for your services to Canada.
To see you. On that, I will adjourn to not adjourn, sorry, suspend to say goodbye.
witnesses for the second hour of today's meeting. I would like to welcome the Minister, the Honourable Jill McKnight, Minister of Veterans Affairs, who is joined by the Department of Veterans Affairs, Nancy Gardner, Deputy Minister,
Sous-ministre adjointe presse.
Jane Hicks, Acting Senior Assistant Deputy Minister, Service Delivery, Mr. Pierre Tessier, Assistant Deputy Minister, Chief Financial Officer and Corporate Services. Always a pleasure to have you with us. And Mitch Freeman, Acting Assistant Deputy Minister, Strategic Policy, Planning and Performance Branch.
Madame la Ministre,
Madam Minister, you will have 5 minutes for your opening remarks, and then we will move on to a Q&A with the committee members. Welcome, Madam Minister, to our committee. Thank you, Madam Chair. Colleagues, thank you for giving me the opportunity to appear today.
As you know, the mandate of Veterans Affairs Canada is to support the well-being of veterans and their families. It is also to promote the recognition and remembrance of achievements and sacrifices of those who served Canada in times of war, military conflict, and peace. This obligation is fulfilled in part through a range of programs and services that the Department manages and delivers. Ceux-ci peuvent
These include disability benefits, income supports, education and training supports, and of course, rehabilitation services.
As veterans released from the military, rehabilitation is particularly important. For many, it is the bridge between service and the next stage of their lives. Through clinical treatment, psychosocial supports, and vocational rehabilitation services, veterans are able to manage service-related injuries and illnesses, restore their independence, and pursue new opportunities in their communities and the civilian labour market. While my department undertakes broader efforts to modernize how programs and services are delivered, the rehabilitation program will also benefit from these efforts. Whether introducing new digital tools and technologies to help staff make decisions more effectively, simplifying processes, or updating systems, each modernization is done to ensure veterans are receiving care and support in the most timely, efficient, and coordinated way possible. It is in this context of modernization that Partners in Canadian Veterans Rehabilitation Services, PCVRS, was awarded the contract to deliver the Rehabilitation Services and Vocational Assistance Program, RSVP, in 2021, having one national contractor to administer the comprehensive medical, social, psychosocial, and vocational rehabilitation services, provides opportunities for improved performance measurement and standardization across the entirety of the program. It has now been over 2 years since the PCVRS contract became fully operational. During this period, we have seen significant progress in standardizing care, expanding access, and implementing new tools and technologies to support both veterans and staff. At the same time, we recognize that a change of this scale requires ongoing assessment and feedback to ensure the new model is meeting expectations. This study is therefore welcome and important. From our data, we can see that while many veterans are pleased with the program under PCVRS, others have raised concerns. We are listening. The service delivery model was designed with quality and performance as a priority. The new Quality Management and Performance Measurement Framework offers daily reports on contractor and VAC performance while measuring the quality of services provided. Additionally, participant feedback is collected at 3 points throughout a participant's rehabilitation plan on various components of the service delivery experience. With the contract approaching the end of its initial 5.5-year term, I have instructed my department to conduct an independent review of the rehabilitation program and PCVRS. The goal of this review will be to enable data-driven decision-making and identify how we can best serve veterans in fulfilling their rehabilitation goals. We value any and all input we receive from veterans and will always strive to make sure this issue is addressed. In doing so, we also recognize that veterans are not a monolith and that individual experiences do vary. Responding to the diverse needs of veterans across the country is an iterative process and one we are committed to getting right. I also want to make clear that under the PCVRS model, the role of VAC case managers has not changed. They remain pivotal in the rehabilitation program and continue to be the final decision makers for all case management services, including rehabilitation. Case managers are at the core of the department's support to veterans and their families, providing essential guidance and assistance. Their authority as decision makers continues under the current service delivery model. Recommendations from PCVRS inform the process and do not override the decisions or expertise of the case managers. The delivery and billing of rehabilitation services are managed by the external contractor, as was also the case prior to the PCVRS contract. Madam Chair, members, Veterans Affairs Canada continues to work with PCVRS to refine service processes, improve the transition experience, and tailor support to the unique needs of each veteran and family member. Above all, frontline services remain accessible, personal, and responsive to the individual's needs. À l'avenir, la modernisation de...
Moving forward, through service modernization, we will continue to ensure that programs are sustainable, consistent, and veterans-focused.
Veterans and their families deserve a modern, effective, and accessible support system. The rehabilitation program delivered by PCVRS is one important step in the continuum of care, but it is only one part of a broader effort to transform and improve every aspect of our service delivery and care. Je salue vos commentaires.
I welcome your input and recommendations as we continue this important work together.
Now happy to take your questions. Thank you. Merci.
Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup, Madame la Ministre.
Thank you, Madam Minister. Your French is improving. Thank you for always using French when you can, and I would like to thank you personally. We are now going to start the first round of questions.
Mr. Richards.
Minister, would you characterize the rehabilitation contract with PCVRS as a success?
The results show that 74% of participants indicate improvement, and I believe that that shows that there's 26% that we can continue to work with and to enhance service delivery for.
Okay, so that number you cite is based on 732 out of almost 24,000 participants, so less than 3% of the total participants, and it only includes, I believe, the veterans who have managed to complete the program. There are a lot of reasons that have been enunciated quite clearly in this committee and otherwise why that doesn't happen in so many cases. Would you say that's a sufficient number to be able to call this a success?
It is a number that is driven by data, by responses from veterans who have participated in the rehabilitation program, and it is information that we did not have under the previous model.
Okay, so I think in an article the Toronto Star did this week, they really summed this up very neatly in a sentence or two. They said that they found that some veterans facing severe mental health issues are drowning in the program's bureaucracy, being pressured to change service providers, given inadequate care, and facing threats to their benefits. They said their health worsened as a result. Hearing that, based on an investigation that was done, does that sound like a success?
Veterans across Canada each have their own unique experiences. Every single one of them is going to have encountered different experiences, different conditions. There's many factors that factor into this. As I mentioned, 74% of respondents have indicated an improvement in their overall well-being. I also acknowledge that that means that there's 26% for whom we can continue to work with, we can continue to do better, and we can continue to enhance the program.
That sort of sounded to me like you were just saying, well, they experienced it differently, which we recall from a former prime minister of your party saying as well. But anyway, let's dig into some of the details of what's behind that article. Service providers that are saying that they can't provide the services that they used to be able to provide, or that we would like to be able to provide to veterans. Veterans telling us the same thing. They can't get the access to the providers they want. And we were told over and over again by your officials and by the PCVRS and affiliated officials the other day that, oh, they can just apply and they can become part of the program. Well, we have this information from one service provider, and this is a fairly major service provider. They first submitted their application on February 15th of 2023. And finally, on June 27th of 2025, they were accepted into the program. That was 28 months later, after dozens of exchanges back and forth and all kinds of paperwork. 28 months. And then they found out that because they're considered an out-of-network provider, that there's not going to be any referrals coming to them. So that clearly tells us that what we're being told was completely inaccurate. Does that sound like success to you?
Madam Chair, through you, I have not spoken with this particular provider. I don't have the information that has been referred to, but I do have department officials here that can speak to the specifics of that, as they would have more details on that.
We had a chance to speak to them the other day, and we weren't given very accurate information. So we'll skip that. But this provider is a very no, hold on, let me finish. It's a very significant provider, that I'm referring to. I'm not sure, they haven't given me the permission to share their name, but it's a very significant provider. So if they took 28 months, I can only imagine what a small service provider that maybe wants to just help a few veterans in their local area would experience. Like it's not working. It's not working. Veterans are not getting access to the providers that they want to be able to access. So I really hope that, you mentioned there's going to be some kind of a review before the contract is renewed. I really hope that this is going to be given a serious look, because there's a problem here. And I think, we even heard from the LifeMarks folks themselves the other day that I think they even have acknowledged, after what they've heard from this committee meeting, that they were even saying that there's clearly a problem. It's saying that when the comment was made that it should be an and, not an or, and they're clearly seeing that it's an or now. So let me move to the communication, because in the recommendations that this committee put forward a couple of years ago, which we were told, again, fairly inaccurately, that they've all been implemented. The union was one of the groups that was supposed to be better consulted with, and there's a recent example that clearly shows that hasn't happened. When I asked the head of the Union of Veterans Affairs Employees a couple of weeks ago at another parliamentary committee whether he was consulted before cuts to the Bureau of Pension Advocates was made, absolutely not was his answer. I should say that we had a national management union meeting on the 15th of January, and no one told us that the Bureau of Pension Advocates was going to be cut.
Thank you very much, Mr. Richards. I'll have to interrupt you. Thank you very much. I would like to now, for 6 minutes, Mrs. Ertl.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, Minister, Dignitary, your team. Lovely to see you here today. Minister, you've just provided a significant update on the status of the rehabilitation program. And this proposed review will be very informative as you chart your next steps. Can you elaborate on this decision for us?
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Dan P. Hurdle. The commitment to ensuring that veterans receive the care and services and benefits to which they are eligible is the core. I've been consistent in that message. That is what I wake up every day. We know that there is opportunities for continual improvement. As I mentioned in my previous answers, we know that many are having success, but not all, and we can continue to do that. So I think there's going to be important independent review, which is going to be undertaken, which is going to allow us to look at the metrics that we've been collecting, look for where those can continue to improve, look for tangible ways that that can be done, and then make decisions on how we can proceed forward.
Okay, thank you. So it bears asking, why are you taking this step? Does undertaking this review call into question the program as the opposition has argued?
No, it doesn't. What it is in response to is that opportunity for continued growth and improvement. We know that there are veterans who are having success in the program, and we know that there are those that are not, which means that there is an opportunity for us to continue to grow and to serve the community of veterans with their rehabilitation needs.
Excellent, thank you. Minister, can you explain what the purpose of the Veterans Affairs Rehabilitation Services and Vocational Assistance Program, what is the purpose and how that relates to the topic today of PCVRS? Certainly, thank you. So the RSVP program, which is the Veterans Services Rehabilitation Program, is a comprehensive and holistic approach to supporting a veteran through their rehabilitative journey. That includes the medical, the psychosocial, and the vocational needs. As it relates to PCVRS, the provider of the rehabilitation program, they are the service delivery organization that delivers the program as part of a 3-tier approach, including the veteran, the VAC case manager, and the RSS from PCVRS. Thank you. And so from your perspective, does the commitment and range of supports to the veteran that is transitioning to civilian life, does that start and stop at PCVRS? No, it does not start and stop at PCVRS. It is part of a continuum of the journey that a veteran goes on. And again, as each individual's veteran's experiences are unique and different to their service, so too is the rehabilitation that they will go through based on their unique experiences. So this is not a one-size-fits-all program. This is a program that gets customized to the needs of the individual veterans. Of course, thank you. Minister, you've spoken before about veteran-centered and veteran-focused. Can you clarify how this is relevant to your assessment of the Rehabilitation Services and Vocational Assistance Program? When something is veteran-centric, the veteran is at the core of it. It is about taking their individual experiences and personalizing the rehabilitation services to support them. The goals are based on their health and their capacity at the time. It is very much about tailoring to the veteran's needs and their readiness. So to me, that is the core of veteran-centric, when the veteran is at the foundation of it all. So extrapolating from that, in your conversations across Canada on the topic of veterans and with veterans, is it in your experience fair to say that all veterans are united in their priorities and in their perspectives? I have had conversations with veterans from British Columbia to the Atlantic coast. I think we recently were together at an event with veterans, and what I have come to see is that each veteran is unique. There are sometimes common themes, which is, I think, to be expected, but the experience of each individual veteran and the contributing factors is unique to that individual. So I have not seen a consistency with every veteran. Yes, there are times where there's common themes. Which makes sense. So would it be more accurate or fair to say that veterans is a term that comprises a wider range of individuals at varying stages in their lives with different priorities?
Yes, very much.
Okay. Thank you.
Are we at time?
Excellent, yes. Thank you, Minister. I'm just going to invite everyone to put their ear. Madame Gaudreau will be addressing you in français. Thank you very much, Madame Gaudreau, pour 6 minutes.
Merci.
Thank you, Chair. Can you just continue speaking, please, Ms. Gaudreau, so we can verify that we're hearing you? We're going to restart your clock. Your time is on. I'm very impressed by your French, Minister. I've been practicing my English for 6 years, and I just wanted to say that your French has improved. Now, for the data, and we talk about improvements of 74%, but if we look at respondents, and perhaps I don't have accurate data, but I saw 732 people respond out of 23,000. So we need to be careful on how we interpret this data, because it's not all 23,000 who were surveyed. That said, I've just learned about that audit. I don't doubt that you want to improve things for veterans. And my first question is as follows. When will you be able to have a conclusion? Did the department indicate to you when that will happen? Will it take a year? Have they given you a timeline?
I will have to come back to you on the specifics of the timeline, and je apologize, mon answer est en anglais.
Ceci étant dit, donc l'étude.
The study that we are carrying out allows us to ask our witnesses for potential improvements and to seek information. So with the audit, you are saying that what we're doing here is important, correct?
The study that the committee is undertaking here, yes, is incredibly important because that helps to give insight. The testimony of the witnesses can give insight into areas that the review, and just, I'm not sure if it's a translation thing, but it's a review that we will be undertaking, an independent review. But this will give the opportunity to perhaps give direction for things that we look at, in addition to many others that we elements that will be identified by Veterans Affairs Canada.
J'ai oublié, Madame la Présidente, de repeser sur.
I forgot, Chair, to restart my clock. I think I have about a minute left. 3 minutes. That's great. All right, so I, during the last meeting, proposed that we have more opportunities in this study to host more meetings and host more and hear from more witnesses. And I'm hearing from you that it would be relevant. We're not trying to dramatize anything. I want us to help our veterans, and some of them are reaching out to me on a weekly basis. And so to have a more in-depth study could help with that review, if I've understood you correctly.
Potentially, I mean, I would turn that back to the chair for the committee to give direction or to lead that conversation with regards to the number of meetings. What I can say is that we will be undertaking the review and looking at this. And as with any time, I would certainly encourage any of our colleagues here to reach out to our office when there is cases when somebody is coming forward with a concern. We welcome you to reach out to our office so that we may offer assistance in connecting with the appropriate person. So when you mentioned that you have veterans reaching out to you, I would encourage you to connect with our office so that we may help support in connecting those veterans with individuals to help them with any concerns.
J'espère que vous allez faire des embauches parce que ça se peut que vous ayez.
I hope you'll be hiring some staff because you might be getting a lot of calls because people have been listening to us. For my last question, I have 15 seconds left. I wanted to know if you're aware of the 300 cases that were canceled in April because of lawyers in supporting veterans. Were you aware of that?
I believe that's starting to move away from the topic that we are here today to address with the PCVRS, which is the invitation that I received today.
Merci, Madame Gaudreau.
Thank you.
Parfait. I will now go to our second round, la deuxième ronde, deuxième tour, Mr. Tomey for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Minister, for being here today and for taking our questions. I'd like to talk about the PCVRS contract, and I'd like to ask you, who designed this? Who designed the assessment? Was it VAC approved?
Could you clarify, please, what you mean by the assessment?
For what the vets have to go through, the assessment that they have to go through, who approved that assessment?
That is a question that I would turn to the department officials who specialize in that part.
Okay, that's fine. I think I already have the answer. So, so this obviously had to be approved by your department. And what I hear is that it's your department, your survey, and that there's going to be an independent review. Who's doing the independent review?
That I don't have a specific name for you at this time, but it will be an independent review so that it is objective.
Could we pick that independent reviewer?
I'm sorry?
Could we, as a committee, pick that independent reviewer so that we could have some impartiality?
That would not be appropriate, but we will be looking for an impartial review of the program.
Okay, I would argue that I think it would be very appropriate that we would get an independent voice that would actually give us some facts here. We've got 25% of the people that have been surveyed unhappy with the service that they've received. In fact, what I'm hearing is that the witnesses that have gone through this assessment have spent more time in assessments than they have in care. And that they're experiencing institutional harm. And they don't feel safe coming forward. And so their voice is our voice. And so we're here to say that there's a lot of people, a lot more people that are unhappy. What would you have to say to them?
Well, Mr. Tomey, I think that's, through the chair to my colleague, there's a couple things I'd like to address in there. So first, you've mentioned that things are taking longer. We do know that with this particular RSVP program, that things are actually happening on average quicker. We know that intake is happening on average within 24 days, assessments within 33 days, and treatment beginning within 21 days.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. You say that you're going to be reviewing the contract. Are you going to withhold performance bonuses based on the information that you're receiving from the news media, the Toronto Star?
I'm sorry, which performance bonuses are you speaking about?
Does PCVRS not receive performance bonuses?
This is about reviewing the overall
but they do
program and undertaking a review of the program, and by extension, then looking at the service delivery of that program.
So we're not going to hear of any performance bonuses being given out to PCVRS because they've already received performance bonuses according to the information that I've received, and the amount of complaints that I've received concerning this contract, I wouldn't be giving them performance bonuses. So I'm asking, are you going to be, because of this review, are you going to give out performance bonuses, or are we going to be saying no?
Through you, Chair. I would encourage any members of this committee who are receiving complaints to reach out to our offices so that we can be doing the follow-up. I have heard reference to a number of complaints being brought to members of this committee, and yet when I look at my office, we are not receiving those complaints to our office, which makes it very difficult to follow up on those. Again, veterans do have multiple options. They have the option of reaching out to their case managers, they have the option of reaching out to the Ombud, and they have the option of reaching out both to my office or to the office of their local MP. And if those messages are not coming to us, as I can't look into it.
I'm sorry, thank you. I appreciate that public service notice, but the thing is, veterans don't trust the Veterans Affairs Department, and they don't trust that going to you, they're going to get an answer. They're very upset, and that's what sanctuary trauma is. That's what institutional harm is.
I apologize sincerely. I'm so sorry. I have to move on. We have Mr. Casey for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and welcome to all of our witnesses. Special welcome to the newly minted Deputy Minister, Ms. Gardner. Welcome to the committee. We very much look forward to working with you, and congratulations on your posting. Minister, on February 23rd, we heard from a veteran by the name of Tim Laidler, and he said that in Canada, if you're injured, they will pay for you to get retrained, but only back to the salary level at which you left the military. Is that true?
That is inaccurate. We will work to support the individual veterans with the rehabilitation plan that best meets their needs of where they are today, and with their readiness to do so. For some veterans, that may look like returning to something that is similar to what they have done previously, which may give that alignment on a wage. Or for other veterans, it could look different to pursuing that which falls within what best suits them today. It is always going to be based on what vocational training is best suited to the needs of the veteran, and there is a hierarchy of standard for return to work, which is one of the premises of the vocational program.
I will have to interrupt the proceeding at this point. The bell are ringing. My understanding, it is a 30 minutes bell. I would like possibly to extend, do 15 minutes, if that's all.
I can't give UC for that. I can give it for 10 minutes because I have a commitment. So
okay,
thank
so
you.
we'll do.
You would have had to have been here at that time anyway.
I will
You should have
suspend.
a sub coming. Couldn't we do 15 minutes? Or?
minutes to continue on our proceeding, and now we're at 3 minutes and 22 seconds. Mr. Casey, the floor is yours.
Kathy?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
The votes were going to be.
Madam Minister, the next couple of questions I'm going to ask should properly, I think, be answered by staff. Please take no offense by that, but the Conservatives didn't seem particularly interested in hearing from the staff, although they were asking questions that were best answered by the staff. So one of the things we heard earlier was Ms. Hicks, that Mr. Richards wasn't satisfied with the accuracy of the information you gave when you testified last, and that what you said about the recommendations in the last meeting was inaccurate. So I would ask whether you've reflected on the testimony that you gave last time, and if there's anything that you would like to add or correct based on Mr. Richards' non-specific assessment of your testimony.
Yes, Mrs. Hicks.
I would say that the testimony that I provided was accurate. In fact, there was consultation with the union on the PCVRS contract, and that is ongoing. We meet on a monthly basis, so there is ongoing engagement. I would like to clarify one point with respect to providers about veterans not being able to use their providers. With providers, we add to the team. There's a rehabilitation team that are added to the care team of the veteran, so there's additional providers. And certainly, that's what we work towards.
Thank you. Can anyone speak to the statistical significance of the sample, which was criticized here? Can anyone speak to that?
Madam Chair, if we're referring to the 732, it is not accurate to say that it's 732 of 23,000. 23,000 people were not surveyed. We started surveying. 23,000 have been referred to PCVRS. They're at various stages of the rehabilitation program. So it is a small sample, but it is not of 23,000.
Okay. Yeah. If it's not 23,000, what is it?
I don't have a specific number of what it is, but it is a much smaller number.
Okay, thank you. Back to you, Minister. Did I understand you to say earlier that you have not had any complaints referred to you with respect to PCVRS service from anyone on this committee?
That is, we have not heard from the MP office of any of the members of the committee. We have had a few inquiries from members of Parliament, of the offices of members of Parliament, but none of them are members of this particular committee of ACFA.
Okay. And is this something that, I mean, are there a range of issues for which you would get approaches from members of Parliament, this committee or otherwise?
Yes, through the chair. There is a number of inquiries and outreach that we have received from members of Parliament on a variety of topics relating to veterans when a veteran has contacted them and they have referred their case through. So, and those are looked into and responded to by members of my staff.
C'est tout? Okay, thank you.
Madame Gaudreau pour 2 minutes et demie, s'il vous plaît.
Ms. Gaudreau for 2.5 minutes. Thank you, Chair. I would like to have that exact number if possible. If we're talking about 2,500 and not 23,000, you know, it's important to have that, and you should know it. My question is as follows. Since last fall, we've been meeting with psychologists, sexologists, researchers. I'm sure you're aware of all of that. And they have all called out the program. And when we held meetings, we understood that there were a lot of improvements that could be made, but that things were going well. But people are telling us that they sometimes have to talk about their issue 2, 3, 4, 5 times. Talked about centralizing case managers, and these are facts. And so I would like to know if you're aware that there are people who are being re-traumatized in this rehabilitation process.
Some of the conversations that I have had with veterans throughout the last 10 months have been have mentioned the topic about telling their story more than once. This would be in relation to PCVRS, but also to a number of experiences that they have gone through their process of transition from CAF out. We are taking the steps that we can to reduce that impact. Again, ensuring that veterans are at the core of the work that is being done is our priority. And so certainly part of that is working to do the best that we can to support a veteran in that process. Working with, and that's where I think it's a really key component.
Madame la Ministre.
I only have 20 seconds left, so you're doing what you can, but what we're hearing is, wake up, you need to act. Ms. Gaudreau, I apologize. You have gone over time, unfortunately, by 4 seconds. Apologies. I have to enforce time for everyone. Thank you, Ms. Gaudreau. Ms. Wagenthal?
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Minister, thank you for being here. We have had conversations with your bureaucrats in regard to what's working with PCVRS and isn't, and a number have come to me, veterans concerned about that assessment that is done at the beginning. They do not get to see it. And I have one that specifically reached out very concerned because he was told and knew that he wouldn't get his IRB if he didn't do this assessment, and he gave them a great deal of information, even about family members and dynamics that ended up in his report. The only reason he knows is because he absolutely insisted that he be able to sign off on that, which makes sense to me for any veteran. However, he found out he was signing off on it after they had already given it out. So will this independent review ensure that that dynamic is being reassessed and that veterans get to see what is expected of their outcomes and ensure that information is not handed out to them, to providers or anyone else within PCVRS before they have the opportunity to read it and sign off on it? Please make sure that that is part of your independent review, because an independent review means that most of your information cannot come from PCVRS, who is doing the job that is being reviewed. And I would ask that you please consider that. So that's my first request. So the second thing is, we were told today that the rehabilitation program was available to spouse widowers, so to other members, their partners, but they had to be widowers. And yet another report says that spouses of seriously injured veterans and survivors are permitted to participate in the VAC rehabilitation program. So what is the answer? Can spouses also, I'm seeing a nod, so that is correct?
Madam Chair, I would like to make sure that we
just a quick
have
yes.
that
If it's a
explained.
yes,
so I
that's
would
great.
like to turn to the officials to be able
Okay,
to
I
answer
have very
that.
little time, so just simply, is it a yes or a no that spouses can?
Yes, in
Okay,
certain
great.
instances.
In certain instances, there we go. Okay, so as of March 31st, 2024, out of 180,006 VAC clients, of which 12,609 were on rehab, only 55 spouses and survivors were approved. How many spouses and survivors applied? And why did only 55? Because quite often, veterans cannot work, and it goes to the spouse. So do you have those numbers, please? How many actually applied as spouses and survivors?
Chair, I would turn to the department for those
If we don't have the answer,
Thank you,
you're
Mrs.
welcome to please
Wagenthal.
provide it to me.
Thank you very much. We could certainly
committee.
appreciate if the committee can receive those numbers. 2.5 minutes, Mrs. Ertl.
Minister, as it relates to this program, how are the strengths and challenges of the program being reviewed to ensure the best health outcomes for veteran participants?
Madam Chair, there are a number of measures that VAC monitors regularly through the program as it relates to performance, to service quality, to participant progress, and to outcome. Veterans Affairs also tracks service timelines, progress and completion rates, health and well-being outcomes, and participant feedback. This will form the base for the review, and then we will determine where we go beyond that to look at the program and its delivery overall.
Understood. What would be the most likely result for the collective veteran access to rehabilitation services if the PCVRS contract was canceled, as has been called for by some?
If the contract that is in place right now was canceled, it would be detrimental to veterans.
And would you describe this as being in the interest of delivering the best possible outcomes for the largest group of veterans and their health and well-being?
Delivering in the best interest of veterans is ensuring a continuum of care, and that access to care remains, or to support through rehabilitation remains available. That is in the best interest of veterans.
Absolutely. And would you describe the view that it is an all or nothing, or that all or nothing is an accurate assessment of where the program and delivery stands today?
That is not an accurate assessment.
Okay, perfect. And lastly, do you believe that while there are veterans who do not feel well served by the program, that the responsible thing to do would be to identify where those gaps exist and address them rather than presuming the entire system is broken?
As the evidence has shown, the program is not entirely broken. There are veterans that are having successful experiences, and there are veterans for whom the experience can be better. Where we're at right now is to take that information, continue to improve the rehabilitation program, and to look at the delivery of that program to best meet the needs of veterans.
Thank you, Minister.
Well, on this, Madam Minister, thank you very much, Minister, for being with us. I just want to say, for those who are celebrating, I wish you all a happy Easter. I know we're not going to be seeing each other for approximately 2 weeks. Our next meeting will take place on Monday, April 13, 2026. We will resume our study on barriers to entrepreneurship among veterans. Is this the will of the committee to adjourn the meeting?